the Florida Writer Podcast, a discussion about writing and other things.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Florida Writer Podcast with your host, Alison Nissen. And today I am lucky enough to be with Raegen Pietrucha. Raegen, welcome to the Florida Writer Podcast.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Could you give us a 60-second elevator pitch about who you are and what you write?
Sure. So I'm a writer. I'm an editor. I also am a consultant, creatively and professionally. So my world really very much is writing. I focus mostly on poetry at the moment, although I have a memoir in progress. I think that's less than 60 seconds, but that'll do.
So poetry is your focus at the moment. Do you edit poetry as well as write it?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, if people reach out to me wanting feedback and stuff, I will usually engage with them, especially if I feel that there's if I feel like I have an inroad to the particular writer's aesthetic. I don't think I would be the best reader for super experimental stuff. But if that were the case, I would definitely let people know. I'm not a person that takes things on if I don't feel that I can realistically help somebody with their work.
Well, Raegen, tell me about your own poetry.
Sure. It's dark and broody, which I realize does not sell it well. But it really kind of focuses on issues, generally women's issues that that are definitely important in my life, that have been important in the lives of the women around me, and that I think are just overall important to women in general. That being said, I do think that the issues that I write about should be at least relevant to people of all genders. So right now, my work, my forthcoming collection, Head of a Gorgon, specifically deals with the myth of Medusa and a feminist retelling or reimagining of the myth from her viewpoint, primarily exploring sexual violence and sort of coming out on the other side of that.
Very interesting. How did you put together the book itself?
Well, that's actually kind of an interesting story. In grad school, so this started out as my thesis project in grad school. And when I was in workshop, I was writing, on the one hand, I was writing some more personal type of poetry, things that were really related to my own life or the lives of people that I knew, and sort of sharing those stories via poetry. And then on the other hand, I was working on this Medusa project and exploring that mythology and the many retellings of that myth. And for people who aren't as familiar, the general gist is, and there are different variations, but the more prominent one is that Medusa is raped by Poseidon, the god of the ocean, on Athena's altar. And from that point forward, she is transformed into this hideous beast with the snakes for hair, which of course is the thing that people most know or are most familiar with about Medusa. So I was really looking at a lot of different variations of the myth and thinking about how that sort of still relates in contemporary terms, and how it might also be updated if we were thinking of her in contemporary terms. So I've got these two kind of tracks that I don't personally see as parallel, but the last workshop that I had, my mentor and friend, Larissa Sporluck, who is just tremendous, by the way, and just has these amazing sort of just like insights that you just don't see. Like she sees your work and where you're going well before you ever will. She's like almost like a psychic poet. and teacher. And so our last workshop, she's like, I really feel like for a full length collection, you should bring these different things that you've been working on together. Like maybe this is the beginning of a collection, and then maybe the Medusa stuff is like the end. And I'm just like, wow, okay, well, so would have been great to have that information sooner. Perhaps I could have worked on it while I was still in school. But when you're ready to hear it is when you hear it. And so and that was the point where she was ready to share it as well. But that really opened a door for me. The myth of Medusa, all of the different variations that I looked at, none of them really explored the sort of like the early days of Medusa. Like we only hear about Medusa in that pivotal moment when she's attacked by Poseidon. And so I thought, well, some of the stuff that I was writing about was childhood type stuff or, young adult type stuff. What if I built out a sort of childhood world for Medusa and actually gave her more of a chronology and more of a timeline, more of a life or existence prior? And that really opened up the door to this full-length collection that's coming out in May.
Well, you're able to explore Medusa as a younger woman and build a persona about her that people can relate to today.
Yes, that is the goal, or one of the goals for sure.
I think that's really fascinating. I love the idea that you've been able to really do all the research, do all the fun exploration about literature, because I am a literature professor, so literature is always my thing. But that you're able to really take that theme and play with it and tease out so much more. I love the idea that you are able to. Well, I said that a lot, didn't I? I think it's fantastic that you've been able to put together something that is transformed, in that we take the classical myth and you've transformed it into something that will resonate with so many people.
I certainly hope so. I mean, that is definitely the goal. The main goal for this work is to really connect with survivors, not just women, but of all genders. And I would like to think that what I've been able to do with the story will resonate and will kind of help, I guess, sort of help us think of not only Medusa as a character, but also of ourselves in different ways, particularly if a person reading it happens to be a survivor. I think that for me, one of the things that really struck me about the myth and that really attracted me to it in the first place is this idea that she at some point becomes this hideous woman and sees herself as this hideous creature. And I think if we can change that within ourselves, I mean, and I just think that's a good strategy, regardless of whether or not you've survived any kind of sexual trauma, to be able to look at yourself not as a monster, but as somebody that can survive and be a champion.
Well, there's so many places in the world today still where women have no control if they have been victims of sexual abuse.
Yes, very much.
And
so.
it totally transforms their, I mean, in the United States, you have the opportunity to have justice. It often plays out that you do have that justice, but in so many other cultures, it's one of those things where you go back and you're like, it's like the Stone Ages, and we're like back in ancient Greece all over again with this myth. And it's not one I'm overly familiar with, and I'm almost embarrassed. Of course, now I have to go read it because I'm really intrigued. How do you plan to market this to various audiences?
Well, so that part is interesting, and a little bit tricky. To your point, there are many countries where, I mean, this book, I mean, many books would not even be allowed across the borders, basically. So I come to it with that understanding that this work probably won't reach those people that it might help most. um, that is completely out of my control. That is the world we live in, and I think it's important that we acknowledge that and are aware of that. As far as marketing to the people who would potentially have access to this book, it's a delicate balance, because I think every survivor is different and views their trauma and the aftermath differently. I have not yet, but intend to reach out to several survivor organizations. Rain is the first that comes to mind, that I hope to be able to partner with or support in some way, whether it be through, having some of the proceeds of sales go to them. I do want to do a little extra research, because I do think that some orgs maybe don't support survivors in a way that I think makes sense, or may do things that are also counter to supporting survivors. So I do have to do some more research on that before I kind of throw myself wholeheartedly into that. But I would like to think too that if I reach out to different, I've reached out to different feminist journals, magazines, outlets, things like that. And just through my network of family, friends, connections via social media, the greater community, that somehow it might manage to get itself into the hands of those people who might most benefit from it. One of the things that's tricky is that, I think there's still a lot of silence around the subject. A lot of people don't want to talk about their experiences and being a survivor, identifying as a survivor. And I think that's totally okay. I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. I think that, hopefully what will happen in an ideal world, what would happen is somebody might recommend it to somebody based on something maybe interesting about the art itself, or interesting about the story that I've created. And the next person who picks up and reads it, it might resonate in that deeper way without them having to sort of out themselves or identify as that person. And I think too, I've had the experience with individual poems where people have reached out to me personally and privately to let me know something personal that they're just not really willing to share with everybody. And like I said, I think that's perfectly acceptable and okay.
I am very impressed with your mission, and I really hope that this book is able to help people through such an incredibly painful situation that they may have in their lives. So, Raegen, is this a book of multiple poems, or is it one long poem?
Yeah, so it is a book of multiple poems, and primarily they are persona poems from the perspective of Medusa. But we do have some persona poems that are from the perspective of various, in my version of the myth, various abusers. And there's also a couple that are from another perspective that I kind of want people to sort of imagine on their own what this represents. But there are, I believe if I recall off the top of my head, I think there are three poems that are called Your Captain Speaking. And I'd like people, I don't want to take too much mystery out of who the captain is. I'd like people to kind of sort of imagine who the captain might be from their own perspective, although I would like to think that by the end of the book, who the captain is a little bit clearer. But that's more of a conceptual thing for readers to figure out. But yeah, by and large, it's individual poems, although some of the poems are quite lengthy. They take the form of dialogues. So it basically goes in a sort of chronological order, although we do start the first poem after sort of this prologue-y type of poem is from the captain, kind of setting up the initial premise of most of the sections. But we start sort of at the beginning of Medusa's life, and then we sort of end at, I guess, middle age or something. Definitely in adulthood for sure.
Well, Raegen, I am so excited to find out more. Can you tell our audience how they can find you and find more about your upcoming book?
Sure. So my website is raegenmp@wordpress.com. And so my name is spelled kind of funky. So I'm going to spell that out. It's Raegen, M as in Mary, P as in Peter, .wordpress.com. That's the best way. And there's a little contact me page if anybody wants to reach out through me or reach out to me through that, they can do that through my website. I'm also on Twitter. My handle is at FreeRadicalRP. And yeah, I mean, you could even just do a Google search, although you'd have a lot of trouble spelling my last name. But those are the easiest ways to get a hold of me.
Raegen, are you ready to switch to our rapid fire questions?
I hope so. And I hope that I answer them more rapidly than I do these other ones.
What do you do with old photographs that you don't like?
Oh, that I don't like. You know what? I'm sort of a little bit of a hoarder. I keep lots of things that I probably shouldn't. And that would even include photographs that I don't like. I think it's part of my whole, like, I don't want to erase a thing just because it was bad. But this is like a larger philosophical / psychological question. So I'm going to stop right there.
Well, I'm looking in my closet and I have all these pictures that have got to go, but I don't know how to get rid of them. So that's why I came up with that question. I was hoping you could help me.
Okay.
I'm thinking I'm going to have an honoring ceremony.
Yes, you can do that.
And have an honoring ceremony and get rid of like the extra 50 Christmas cards I ordered that I didn't send. What do I do with those? So, I just feel like it's bad luck if you get rid of a picture, even though it's like the most hideous thing that's ever been taken of you.
No, not at all. And in fact, it's funny that you say that, because one thing that I have found, except I didn't follow my own advice, and that's the problem. But here's another way to look at it. If you don't have a problem with digital storage levels, you can take a picture of the things that you're going to throw out, but then you have to actually throw them out. And that's where I got it wrong. But you will hopefully get it right if you choose that approach.
Very good suggestion. Very good suggestion. All right. Second question. What is the weather outside your window right now?
It's very sunny, and today is warm. Different parts of Florida, which I didn't know until I moved here, have very kind of different temperatures and climates. But where I'm at, it really doesn't get below 60 during the day, like ever, apparently. So,
and I'm going to ask, golf with an O or golf with a U?
Oh, like as in how you
would you rather play golf or visit the golf?
Oh no, visit the golf. Like golf is not my thing. It was my dad and my former stepdad. It was totally their thing. Even my mom played for a while, but no, I never got into it. Apparently I had a decent swing. I had like one lesson, but no. I like water. I like ocean. I don't particularly think I need to be on a golf course.
Well, Raegen Pietrucha, thank you so much for stopping by.
Thank you so much for having me, Allison. This has been really great.
You have been listening to another edition of the Florida Writer Podcast with your host, Alison Nissen. Allison out. Woo! We're all done.
Yay! Thank you. This has been really great.
Raegen Pietrucha writes, edits, and consults creatively and professionally. Her chapbook, An Animal I Can't Name, won the 2015 Two of Cups Press competition. Her debut poetry collection, Head of a Gorgon, is forthcoming with Vegetarian Alcoholic Press in May, and she has a memoir in progress. For more information about Raegen, visit her at reagenmp.wordpress.com. That's RAEGENMP.wordpress.com. For more information about the Florida Writers Association, visit us at floridawriters.org.